We've got questions.
What have I done on the railroad itself? A couple good questions. We're going to dive into those in just a moment.
They're all good questions. We'll determine that. But what powers these crossovers? Do they throw themselves?
Starting to cut up, and I'm putting windows or vents into this particular silo.
Boy, what's going on inside this engine? It's got LEDs? Boy, that looks cool. Who makes this high rail? Then we talk about the importance of friendship. We also check out what the Curmudgeon's gripe of the week is this week. Only in this episode of SOO The Milwaukee Road.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Season 5 of SOO The Milwaukee Road. It's been a while since I've posted any updates.
You said it.
But I'm going to update you on a lot of different things that I've been working on. It ranges everything from locomotive decoder installs to that passenger car of the Great Northern that has taken me forever to finish. So it's done. It's going to end up on the GN in 1970. But I've tackled a lot of different things, not the railroad so much. I've actually had a few projects that I've been working on in my home. I've worked on renovating our master bathroom, our master closet. I also helped my in-laws up at their family cabin. We remodeled their kitchen. So I've been working on other projects. My parents ended up changing out the floor in their home. I'm assisting wherever I can outside of the railroad world. But this is my getaway, this is the escape, and this is the way to kind of knock out some projects that aren't work-related or project-related from like a remodel standpoint. What have I done on the railroad itself? A couple good questions. We're going to dive into those in just a moment.
All right, it's quiz time. Let's talk SDLs.
An EMD SDL39 is a 6-axle road switcher as a diesel electric locomotive built by the General Motors Electromotive Division between March 1969 and November 1972. Power was provided by EMD's 645E3 12-cylinder engine used in the EMD GP39, which generated 2,300 horsepower. The unit was built on a short 55-foot 2-inch frame with CC export trucks. Do you know what SDL stands for? Is it A, Super Duty LTD, B, Short Drive Linkage, C, Standard Duty Light, or is it D, Special Duty Lightweight? We'll find out later in this episode.
Some of the things that I've done on the railroad, one of them is I actually hooked up a set of servos underneath here. This isn't rocket science. I've already got, and I use these little 9-gram servos. They are mounted underneath. I ordered these little, this was through Hobby King, which is an airline or an airplane supplier for a lot of airplane parts. They do some model railroading, but it's more airplane related. But Hobby King had these. They no longer make this particular one, but there are 3D printed mounts that are out there. But I've mounted all these to the underside of the railroad. So this side just needs to get them hooked up. I'm using a Tam Valley decoder to be able to power it. It's called an octacoder. It has 8 addresses, but you can power up to, I think in this case it would be 16 servos if you're doing like 8 crossovers. As an example, switch 104, it's got 2 servos that power it. When I address 104, it throws those 2 at the same time. Well, that's only 1 address going to the octacoder. There's those elements that I'm kind of tying together. I'm working my way south electrically, and I'm working my way north as far as the structures are concerned. Because one of the things I did actually dive into was starting to cut up, and I'm putting windows or vents into this particular silo. It's kind of a tedious little process, but I think it's going to be a cool look or an effect. These again were just that Schedule 40 PVC, and I ripped them in half, and I showed a video about those in season, I think it was either season 4 or season 3.
Season 4, episode 9.
They all start to meld together. My goal is just to kind of keep modeling. I'm merely here sharing what I'm doing, just to give you guys either some motivation, share some tips, as well as just kind of check out what some other modelers are doing. So that's where the SOO The Milwaukee Road Railroad is at currently. We're going to take a look at some of the other elements that the railroad has going on, but more going to be locomotives and rolling stock.
Well, look here. We got Luke and Owen Lemons sitting back there with Mr. Bob Rivard. Some Sioux Line modelers just hanging out in the back.
Surprise, surprise.
What we're looking at here is a flashback to 2020, the Twin Cities Modelers Retreat. It was a great way to be able to get to know fellow modelers and, well, start friendships that may last a lifetime. One of those was Kurt Helverson, who's into 187 scale vehicles, and well, you know I am as well. This is kind of modern, but Kurt was going to backdate it by chopping up a Ford 850. He took one of these tow trucks that Athearn had produced. This was back in 2008, so don't get excited about the $24.98 price. That'd be a steal today. He looked at this and says, you know what this looks like? Kind of looks like a McDonald's truck. So I'm going to cut this thing up. He ended up taking the cab off and replacing the 850 and turning it into a Great Northern. I mean, how cool is that? To be able to modify and customize something like this. And as small as these things are, you have no idea how difficult it is to be able to get all this stuff in it and working.
What about lights, beacon, moving crane?
And it's not problem-free. You run into a few things every now and again, but he's refining the old system. And if you've worked in something at this scale, you know how difficult it is to get all that stuff in there.
It's a small world.
Nicely done, Kurt. Speaking of small worlds, a fellow modeler, Mike, was having an issue with his proto-throttle, and we went kind of back and forth trying to resolve that. I ended up putting together a video for him to be able to rectify the issue, in which he did, so it was good to see him up and running. It's kind of frustrating when things don't work, but when you've got a little bit of information, that goes a long ways. And speaking of information, Mike shared that he knew Mike. This is Mike Moore photographing the prototype back in the day. And you might ask,
Who's Mike Moore?
well, Mike is actually a fellow modeler that was always selling at the shows. He was from Albert Lee. He kind of hung around with this band of misfits. And you might say,
Who is this band of misfits?
why, it's the cast of Glengarry Glen Ross.
Oh, have I got your attention now? Good. Because we're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. You get the picture? You laughing now?
If you've not seen Glengarry Glen Ross, it's not for everybody, but you got Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Ed Harris, Alan Arkin, Kevin Spacey. It's quite the cast of characters.
Just like the guys we mentioned prior.
No, this isn't Alec Baldwin and Jack Lemmon standing on the set of Glengarry Glen Ross. This is Tom Wenzel and Mike Moore out rail fanning. Checking out the scene. When I'd see him at the shows, they'd always say,
Hey, we're gonna go rail fanning. Do you know any good spots?
and they'd definitely get out there and find some. And find some they did. Not only did they find trains, they found friendships that have lasted a lifetime. That's one thing that's important, and I think a lot of people overlook. If you're an older guy and you're talking to the younger guys,
Share the information.
if you're the younger guy and you don't know any of these older guys, get to know them and learn the information. That's the only way we can learn within the hobby, is getting to know one another. That's what's important, because you never know how long are these guys going to be around. How long are we going to get to know them? How many questions are you going to ask? How many railroads are you going to get to see? How many flea markets are you going to have left to attend, as well as conversations that you're going to strike up? It's worth doing it. You might as well do it now. Get out there. Enjoy the railroad. Enjoy the friendships, because, well, we don't all last forever. Unfortunately, we lost Mike Moore in 2020. We'll miss you, Mike. Thanks for the memories. All right, do you know what SDL stands for? Were you sitting there guessing? Well, I hope not, and you knew the answer was D, Special Duty Lightweight. A big thanks to Mike Ostertag for confirming. Spoon!
That is special.
And so is the SDL39.
All right, to take a look at some of the locomotives I've been working on, I worked on another MP15. I got another one sitting here, which is a Bandit. I might finish that out by banding it up more, or removing some of the banditized look of it and turn it into a Milwaukee Road unit. I'm thinking right now I'm probably going to go the other way. I'm going to go Bandit, because I think I only have one that's painted into Bandit paint scheme. Freight cars themselves, I haven't done a whole lot. I have worked on some of these roof walks with the temperature shift. They've kind of popped up, so I am addressing some of those. I'll show you one here. It kind of pops up, and you're going to find that on some of those, and I'll show you how I end up modifying that in one of the future episodes of SOO The Milwaukee Road.
We get it.
One of the big ones that I've done recently has been a pair of SDL39's.
It's a beaut, Clog, it's a beaut.
Now, Scale Trains just announced theirs, and we're going to get into that in a future video. As I jokingly say,
You're welcome.
for anybody that's looking for SDL39's, if I didn't do these,
You wouldn't get them.
why is that?
Because if I don't create it, they won't make it.
So I created a pair of these. 586 used to be 583. I had a fellow modeler, Dennis, that he had originally gone in here and put Loc sound, dual iPhone speakers, incandescent lighting as a beacon.
And then I built 589.
589 has 19 LEDs in it.
Step back, son. There's nothing to see here.
I did the class lights, I did the step lights, I did the beacon, I did ground lights. I ended up doing LEDs in the front and the rear.
So we dove in and we put a lot of LEDs into this particular unit. 586 got the same thing. It has the correct rotary beacon. I painted the interior. I ended up diving into this one far more than I originally thought I would. I originally was just going to leave the number 583. Then Skeletrains comes out with theirs, and what number do they pick?
583.
583, you bet.
They picked 583 because I already had it.
That's generally the logic behind what numbers they choose.
And again, not really. Settle down for people that are like,
That's not the way it is.
this is just what I'm talking about as far as these units. I ended up picking both of these. They're St. Paul based, so I have the St. Paul decal on them. I cover these in a lot more detail. I did a full, I think a 15-minute overview of these two units, and you're actually going to see 586 before and when it was actually 583. So you can see a little before and after as far as that's concerned. Rolling stock, moving forward, I did do this tail car. It had taken forever to actually finish. I've done it. We'll take a look at that in a little bit more detail. And then lastly, we have a GP35 here. This is a former Great Northern GP35. That's in BN paint, and it's going to actually be one of my transfer units that will run out of the Raymond Avenue yard. Now, people look at it and they say, well, you're still going to do the big railroad when you have this stuff already in here? This is nice, and this is fun. Anybody that is in, this is I think I'm at a 15 by 12 room.
Can you believe he got it wrong? I
That's
can't
not
believe
right.
it. It's
Is
not
this
even
his
own
house?
12 by 10 room.
It's a nice size. As you know, it has the Murphy bed here, so it can be a guest room still. But this is just a nice way to be able to come down and switch and run some trains, have a little fun with it. But when you run a switching railroad like this, I'm not running freights. I do like running freights, so I do want to still continue with the Hiawatha going north. This district itself is going to end in terms of the buildings and structures, but it will work its way to Southtown Yard, which will be in the other room. So that whole plan is still in process. I'm still thinking it through. I'm planning on doing it. When? I'm not exactly sure. I would like to get the other room just painted, finished, done, tear out all the floors are covered right now just with craft paper. But once that's all taken up, I'll be able to get the room and start to develop the railroad in there. So that'll be a down the road project. So that's what has happened thus far. There isn't anything on the rolling stock side of things that I've really done beyond working on locomotives, doing the passenger car, and of course the SDL39's. So hopefully you enjoy the future episodes that we got coming up. I don't cover everything in excessive detail. I'm just giving you guys updates on what I'm kind of doing, and hopefully it encourages you.
So turn off this video and get down to your railroad and start modeling yourself.
Alright, here's a Curmudgeon coming at you for the gripe of the week. The gripe of the week this week is actually looking at perfection, trying to strive for perfection, making sure your railroad is flawless and perfect. Well, I'm the Curmudgeon coming at you, telling you that ain't gonna happen. You need to think of your railroad a lot like people think of you. And it's got a lot of flaws, it's got some issues, and seasonal change, there's a lot of expanding and contracting, and not in a good way. But when it comes down to it, you're never going to achieve perfection. You're always going to have flaws, both you and your railroad. So just take them for what they are, make sure your track work's actually working well, because that's important, and make sure your cars roll well, because other than that, the rest is just going to come with time. And that's Curmudgeon's gripe of the week. You need to think of your railroad a lot like people think of you. And it's got a lot of flaws.
A big thanks to everybody that watches to the end, that has hit like, hit subscribe, as well as made comments in the past. It's those actions that help share this content, so if you haven't checked out other episodes, feel free to do so. You can also check out the tour of the GN in 1970, as well as the past episodes of the GN in 1970.
70s.
You need to think of your railroad a lot like people think of you. And it's got a lot of flaws.